Hey, what's up, everybody? Chris here, and I have been working through rewatching all of the Halloween films. Now, full disclosure, the only Halloween movie I've never seen is Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. The first one was okay, it was fine. I have just never really been a big fan of his design and his general approach. I just don't think he's that great of a director, just my opinion, just sort of the way he approaches things. I'm not a fan of that. However, this go around, I am going to watch Halloween 2 just so I can be a completionist and say that I've seen them all. However, I've seen every other Halloween movie. And in rewatching these, one thing that kind of stands out is that the masks are highly variant between movies, right? Which doesn't make a ton of sense. I mean, in some ways, you could say, in terms of the plot, maybe it does. But I wanted to kind of give you my 2 cents on which mask I think are the best and which are the absolute worst. Obviously, this is completely subjective and just based on my rankings. You can see I've got Michael here behind me in the background a little bit. But anyway, let's go through these. And in all likelihood, I could totally see myself maybe just mislabeling these based on movie. But I think these are all listed here on tiermaker.com with this particular list that was created by somebody based on the order of film release. But if we start with the OG mask, the Shatner mask, that is an S tier iconic mask. It's amazing. I think it's still one of the creepiest things in all of horror. It just looks really good on camera. It's just a great mask for a slasher film. I just think it works perfectly great. And I will say too, as I'm ranking these, part of what's going to kind of color my decision about what a good mask is and isn't is how much it actually brings down the movie. I think the mask in the OG Halloween helps elevate it, as a film just because of how iconic it is, how freaky it looks, all of that kind of stuff, and just sort of that blank stare. But the OG mask is obviously S tier. Now, if we get to Halloween 2, I think that is an A tier mask. It is a little bit different than the original, but it still looks really good. And it's still close enough to say this is essentially the same one from the first movie. And I really like Halloween 2, the 1981 movie that came out, because it is such a direct continuation of the first movie. I mean, it literally picks up minutes or exactly where the first one leaves off. It's got Dr. Loomis, it's got Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie Strode, it's got kind of all the elements you would want there. The way it's paced and set up is reminiscent of what we got from John Carpenter in the first movie. I will say that the scares and the kills in the second movie aren't as good. They're a little more jump scary. They don't have the time to breathe like they do in the OG movie, but the mask is great for Halloween 2. Okay. I just watched this one not long ago, Halloween 4, because Halloween 3 Season of the Witch has nothing to do with Michael Myers. But Halloween 4, I think the return of Michael Myers, this is a hideous mask. I mean, just Michael's presentation in this movie honestly tanks it. And it kind of sucks because otherwise it's a pretty solid sequel. Like, the story is interesting. It's kind of taking things in a new direction while kind of honoring what came before. But the mask just looks so stupid. And in this movie, Michael's got shoulder pads. It's just, I hate this mask. I think it looks terrible. I think equally bad, honestly. I would say of these two, the Halloween 4 mask is worse, but I also hate the 1 in 5. And I think part of it, other than the fact that the face looks different, is the neck and just how much it sticks out. It just looks really weird. There are some weird scenes in that movie too. There's this sort of doofy pair of cops that are played up briefly for comedic effect, but it doesn't work at all. But anyway, the mask looks very bad. It's still, if there were an F level to this tier, I would put this below the one for Halloween 4, but they're both pretty terrible. Okay, I think this is the one from The Curse of Michael Myers, um, which I think is okay. I think this one's okay. I think this one was trending back toward what we got with the first two movies. It's kind of in between, honestly, maybe Halloween 5 and Halloween 2 in terms of the aesthetic and the look. It's okay. I think that Halloween H2O's mask is pretty bad, but it's not as bad as 4 and 5. And if I'm remembering correctly, there's actually some CG elements at some point in that movie to his mask. It just looks super weird and bizarre. And there's kind of that close-up shot where he finally comes face to face with Jamie Lee Curtis, through the door, and he turns his head like this. It just looks weird. And I think the hair is not quite right with it. It looks too styled, maybe. I don't know what, for that time period, late 90s, whatever, but it's okay, but it's not as bad as 4 and 5. I kind of feel the same way about Resurrection. I mean, this to me is the worst Halloween movie. Like, by far, it's the dumbest. This felt like one of those early 2000s cash grabs efforts that basically no effort was put into the plot at all. The mask is okay, but generally it looks kind of weird to me. The area between the nose and the mouth is too elongated. Like it just doesn't look quite right in the way that it's set up. Again, I don't understand. Maybe there was an issue accessing the mold, but I don't understand why they just didn't make an effort to use as closely as possible the original mold, like we got with the David Gordon Green trilogy, which we'll get to in just a second. But anyway, it's okay, just barely above though. I would say 4 and 5. Okay, so this is Halloween 1, the Rob Zombie Halloween. I kind of like this mask. I do not think it's as good as the OG mask, which again is iconic, but I think it's different enough to be its own thing, and it kind of retains the spirit of the original mask. Now, again, not having seen Halloween 2, it's hard for me to Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. It's hard for me to comment on this, but based on the images I've seen of this, I would say this is all right too. I think it gets a little bit difficult when the mask has damage. And now the David Gordon Green Halloweens deal with that, I think, much better. But when the mask has damage, you can start to see some of Michael's face and all of that. It gets a little bit wonky, but it's still okay. It's again to me better than 4 and 5, which I think are the rock bottom moments, mask wise, of this franchise, of these films. I love the one in 2018. I think the mask in Halloween 2018 is great. I think it's very, very close to the OG mask. What's interesting about it is it looks like an older version of what we know as Michael's face as the mask. Like it was a good way to kind of weather and age it. Now, reality, I've seen pictures of the actual mask used for filming for the original movie. It is all torn to shreds and looks rough. It hasn't held its shape very well, I guess, because of how it was stored. So obviously in reality, it would not look this great in like an evidence locker maybe or something like that. But I like the way this one looks. Likewise, I like the damage of the mask in Halloween Kills as that sort of goes on, because at the end of 2018, Laurie tries to burn Michael alive in her house. He gets out, but part of his mask is singed. And that's when he goes on that rampage against the firefighters that are trying to basically save him. I just think it looks cool the way they handled it, and I like too with these three movies that they kept the mask the same, but obviously just added in the damage as it occurred. So I'm going to say the same thing, honestly, for Ends. Even though I really don't like Halloween Ends, I didn't like narratively the direction they went with it. I get what they were trying to do. I just don't think it worked personally. But movie aside, story aside, I think the mask looks good the more damage is taken, because at the end of Halloween Kills, he's basically getting the crap kicked out of him by the residents of Haddonfield, which happens in Halloween 4, right? It's borrowing some ideas from that movie, but the mask itself, I think, looks cool. The damage, they managed that well. Those are all very solid masks. Similarly, even though it's not the OG mask, and I kind of want to put this up here, but I can't because it's not the OG. The flashback scene, which is what I think this is from in Halloween Kills, that mask looks almost identical to the original. That scene is amazing. That flashback scene near the beginning of Halloween Kills, that's perfect. Even Dr. Loomis, like, it's amazing how realistic he looks in that scene. But anyway, here's how I'd rate these, right? So S tier, Halloween, the OG, the original, amazing, all the way to the bottom, which would be 4 and 5, and kind of everything in between. So let me know what your mask rankings would be for the Halloween films. As always, thanks so much for watching, and I'll chat back in soon.